Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our Rise of Augustus series. We have, of course, the proscriptions just took place. The Second Triumvirate really just began. Last episode, by the way, make sure you're watching these chronologically. Otherwise, what are you doing? So go watch the other ones. But if you're watching the full-on compilation, you're going to get tired of me saying that. Nevertheless, we have just seen Octavian get flipped to the dark side of the force because Cicero and team really wanted him to show allegiance to Decimus. Now Decimus is dead. He's dead. His head got cut off by a chieftain. So now you have this overwhelming, just most powerful force that Rome has ever seen between these three men, Lepidus, Octavian, of course, Antony. And now here we go. Let's go.
Octavian did apparently try to argue against this for 2 days before relenting.
Let's see what I'm talking about.
Ally of Octavian was also proscribed, though Octavian did apparently try to argue against this for 2 days.
Oh, so he didn't want Cicero to be on the proscription. Okay.
Before relenting. It is important to note here that Cassius Dio and Paterculus claim that Octavian only took part because he held similar authority, that he was effectively unwilling, showing himself later to be a merciful man, and that he tried to save many from the proscriptions.
Oh.
However,
but remember, Caesar was a huge, I wouldn't say a direct mentor, but he was a mentor to Octavian. Actually, you can kind of say he was a mentor. Nevertheless, he was, he's the adopted heir, but more or less than anything, Caesar was very merciful, albeit he was very merciful. Like, he didn't even want Cato to die. Think about that. So I can see the resemblance there.
Other sources, such as Appian and Plutarch, do not say this. In their accounts, all three men were equally culpable.
Oh.
Dio is well known as being overly flattering to Octavian as a result of his position as a senator in the empire, and thus having a vested interest in having a sympathetic view of the emperor. Paterculus has similar problems, serving during Octavian's reign as emperor under Octavian's grandson, and thus having a personal investment in glorifying him.
I mean, I don't see it. I mean, there's like a couple cases there, like the moderate people, but look. These people, it's an eye for an eye. It's an eye for an eye.
Their views have proved persistent, but the accounts may well be apologist revisionism, and Appian and Plutarch do not offer the same excuses, both putting Octavian on the same level as Antony and Lepidus. Indeed, Appian says that the terrors that would be inflicted on Rome during this time were all the more remarkable precisely because of Octavian's participation, and Plutarch described the trio as having made a barter of murder for murder. Within just 3 days, the three men had planned how to take full control of the Senate, planned a war against the Liberators, and had planned the deaths of 300 senators, about a third of the Senate,
and 2,000 equites? Wow.
And 2,000 knights.
Wow.
Unofficially, the Second Triumvirate had just been formed.
Jeez.
After the negotiations, the three began to march on Rome. For now, the majority of the proscriptions were put on hold, but there were 17 men who needed to be targeted early, among them Cicero and Salvius, a tribune of the plebs. Cicero, who held the sympathy of the public, managed to elude his hunters, while Salvius was not so lucky. He was found hosting a banquet when soldiers burst in, ordering the guests to remain in their positions, and beheaded the tribune, leaving his guests reclining in shock next to his beheaded corpse.
Okay. Wow.
Panic gripped the city shortly afterwards, and Pedius, one of the consuls of the year, publicized the names of the 17 men the triumvirs were hunting, attempting to reassure the public that only those 17 were listed. Pedius died the following day, reportedly of, quote, political fatigue, unquote.
Political fatigue.
But it is not hard to think that he was murdered for having revealed the 17 names.
Oh, yeah.
Cicero, having tried to escape Italy by sea, had grown sick and was forced to make land. He was soon found near his villa in Formiae, being carried in a litter. His slaves and other locals had lied about his location to protect him, but he had finally been betrayed by a local shoemaker. A centurion, who Cicero had previously defended, found the now 63-year-old orator. He accepted his death, offering his neck, and was executed. Cicero had been the voice of the Republic. Whether one agrees or disagrees with his actions or politics, he was a brave man who, when surrounded by swords, tried to defend his republic with a pen. In the words of Paterculus, "You took from Marcus Cicero a few anxious days, a few senile years, a life which would have been more wretched under your dominion than was his death in your triumvirate. But you did not rob him of his fame, the glory of his deeds and words. Nay, you but enhanced them. That
is true. That is true. He was legendary in death for that.
Lives and will continue to live in the memory of the ages, and so long as the universe shall endure, this universe, which he saw with eye of his mind, grasped with his intellect, and illuminated with his eloquence, shall be accompanied by the fame of Cicero."
I promise you one thing, that is 100% true. I mean, Cicero has been eternalized through that, because there is not one country in this modern day that has no Cicero felt like philosophy into their constitution or their stances or so many works prior and past. Has been always, like, whether it be origins of how we indoctrinate definitions or conversate or just converse in general too, in general across the governments. There is some sort of breadcrumbs that lead to Cicero somehow, some way, and through his published works and through his oratorial speeches that have been prescribed, it has breadcrumbs back to Cicero. So, R.I.P. Cicero. R.I.P.
His head and his hands, with which he'd written such damning speeches against Antony, were nailed to the rostra where he had given so many speeches.
Jeez.
The triumvirs entered Rome over 3 days, each bringing a bodyguard and legion, completely disregarding the law prohibiting arms in the city.
The Pomerium.
A tribune of the plebs, Publius Titius, proposed the law that would give extraordinary powers to Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. With their legions and bodyguard prowling the city, the bill was swiftly passed. The Second Triumvirate was now legally established. Overnight, lists appeared in the Forum with the names of the condemned. A reward was also offered, 2,500 denarii for each head of a proscribed man brought to the triumvirs. Rewards were also offered for information on a wanted man's location, while any person harboring a fugitive would also be added to the list.
Wow.
The gates of Rome were blocked by soldiers, and the proscriptions began in earnest.
You can't fight this. It's impossible to fight that.
Appian's account of the proscriptions is harrowing. Men hid in sewers, wells, chimneys, ovens, wherever they could, before being discovered, dragged out, and executed by their hunters. One man even hid himself in a dung heap. The soldiers, disgusted and unwilling to reach in for him, simply stabbed the heap with spears until he emerged, then promptly beheaded him. Brothers holding on to one another were executed together in one swing of a sword. Shockingly, even children were not safe. Orphans whose parents had left them with large amounts of money were also added to the list.
That's horrible.
One was found at his school with his tutor. When the hunters burst into his classroom, the tutor tried to shield the young boy with his body, but both were cut down without mercy.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Night after night, the proscription lists were expanded, so none truly knew if they were safe or not. Gangs roamed the city, looking for any of the proscribed, and any opportunity to loot abandoned houses. Fear was rampant. Wives, siblings, and friends informed on their loved ones, and no one was sure who could be trusted. Even some children, eager for their inheritance, reported on their fathers.
That's crazy.
with so many being
Wait. Well, if you get that inheritance, you also could be a target, though.
killed. Many seized the opportunity to settle old scores, murdering their rivals under the pretense that they had been proscribed.
Wow.
Many simply gave in, either handing themselves over in order to try and protect their families, or simply waiting for death. Others decided to take fate into their own hands, jumping off rooftops or bridges. Statius, an 80-year-old senator, opened the doors of his house to the public and invited them to take anything they wanted. Once his property had been stripped, he burnt it with himself inside.
Ah.
Many wives also killed themselves over the bodies of their husbands, entire families being eradicated. Among
And by the way, what this is, it's very similar to like a genocide, but not entirely a genocide. It's a prescription, and it's eradicating possible challengers to this power that has just been formed. It is giving no chance because they've lived through. They're gonna have. This is the second civil war. There's gonna be a third when Antony and Octavian kind of like butt heads, but this is the second of the third, and we are at a point to where, all right, we're tired of this. Let's eliminate the threats. And that's what they're doing.
Among these horrors, there were also acts of extraordinary bravery. A senator named Capito, for example, fought in the narrow passage of his doorway, cutting down a number of his hunters before being overwhelmed and butchered. Sons faked the deaths of their fathers and then smuggled them out, one carrying his elderly father on his shoulders. The slave of one senator, upon hearing that soldiers were coming for his master, swapped outfits with his master and took his place in his bed.
Jeez.
The soldiers arrived and killed the slave where he lay, the senator dressed as a slave standing nearby. Antony's mother, Julia, was outraged that her brother Lucius had been added to the list and confronted Antony, defiantly declaring that she would protect her brother and that he would have to kill her too if he wanted his uncle dead. Antony relented, Lucius's life being saved.
Wow. Okay, there's some human in there. There's a human inside Antony, we can tell now.
When the Triumvirs announced an unheard of before tax upon women, Hortensia, the daughter of a famous lawyer, rallied the women and confronted the Triumvirs. She insisted that if Rome were fighting a foreign power, the women would gladly support the state. But in civil wars may we never contribute nor ever assist you against each other. Given the current political climate, it was an incredibly brave act.
There is so much happening.
The Triumvirs needed money, and the confiscation of prescribed property was intended to solve this. Through such grisly methods, the Triumvirs accumulated huge amounts of property, but they struggled to sell them. Many of the richest men were now dead, and many were terrified to bid on the properties, lest they also be seen as having money and being added to the lists. Thanks to
it's like a conundrum right there. It's a catch-22.
Hortensia, the tax on women was only enforced upon 400 of Rome's richest, forcing the Triumvirs to compensate by forcing male property owners to lend money to the state. Some men did escape the proscriptions, many flocking to the banners of Sextus Pompey in Sicily or Brutus and Cassius in the east. Sextus even went so far as to offer his own rewards for those that helped proscribed men escape to him. As a result, Sextus, whose situation so far had been rather weak, had an influx of powerful men into his faction.
Yeah, he's going to be enemy number one very soon. Brutus and Cassius obviously are on the list, high up the list.
Including many who had seen military service, greatly strengthening his position. With many of the most powerful men in Rome either dead or having fled the country, Antony, Lepidus and Octavian were left in complete command of Rome. The proscriptions, which began in November of 43 BC, continued for months into 42 BC and cemented the Second Triumvirate as the masters of Rome. The First Triumvirate, consisting of Crassus, Pompey and Caesar, had wielded power through the influence of the three men. It had been founded upon a base.
But when they had the Senate still had pretty much the same powers the Senate had prior. For, like this triumvirate was pale compared to what we have now.
contests of mutual opportunism had been largely bloodless, and while the three men unofficially ruled Rome, kept at least the facade of the Republican constitution. Even the dictatorship of Caesar had relied far more on the political alliances and debts created by Caesar than terror.
Oh yeah.
The Second Triumvirate was different. It was ratified by law, effectively making Lepidus, Antony and Octavian simultaneous dictators in all but name, and was founded upon fear and death. The purges were appalling for people at the time. By these means, the Caesarian party had seized control of Rome. In the east, however, Brutus and Cassius had been raising a colossal army and consolidating their position. History once again was about to repeat itself, with the Caesarian and Pompeian parties again fighting a battle to decide Rome's fate in Greece.
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait. Here we go.
Brutus had seized Macedonia and the legions located there from Antony's brother Gaius in 43 BC. Worried that his men would just as easily defect back to Antony's side, Brutus had sailed across the Aegean to Asia Minor, hoping that the distance would prevent any pro-Antony rumors from reaching them.
Yeah, that's smart.
From here, he consolidated his position, rallying more men to his cause, particularly refugees fleeing the Triumvirate's proscriptions in Rome. Combined with the army previously under Gaius's command, he had 8 legions. Gaius Antonius proved to be a constant problem though, attempting to instigate a number of mutinies among Brutus's ranks. After the formation of the Second Triumvirate, it was decided that Gaius was now too dangerous to be left alive.
Well,
and he was executed at the start of 42 BC.
Dang.
Around this same time, Brutus, nervous of a potential revolt in Macedonia, crossed back into Europe to handle any potential disasters. He also undertook a minor expedition in Thrace, winning the Thracian king Rescupolis to the Pompeian cause.
I thought I was about to fight them. I was like, that was stupid. But okay, he's getting some allies.
After reaffirming his control of Macedonia, he once again pulled back to Asia Minor. Meanwhile in Syria, Cassius, following the death of Dolabella, had planned to march on Egypt. Out of the 12 legions that Cassius had procured from the governors of the east, 4 had been sent by Cleopatra to assist Dolabella before being intercepted en route. It was apparent then that Cleopatra intended to side with the Triumvirs.
Remember, she has Caesar's actual child still.
And Cassius aimed to quash this possibility early. As he began his march on Cleopatra, however, word reached him of the formation of the Second Triumvirate, and that they had already begun moving forces into Greece, sailing 8 legions across the Adriatic. Immediately, Cassius abandoned his plan, marching to Asia Minor with all speed to combine with Brutus, requesting aid from eastern client kings and even the Parthians as he marched. The two men met in Smyrna in Anatolia around late January 42 BC. Initially, Brutus suggested that they take their entire force of 20 legions immediately to Macedonia to confront the Triumvirs. He reasoned that if they attacked now, they would be able to crush the 8 legions and prevent any more from landing in Macedonia. Cassius, on the other hand, disagreed. The Triumvirs had their hands full in Rome, and would also be nervous of Sextus Pompey amassing forces in Sicily. Moreover, the Caesarians had a number of allies in the area, namely the Rhodians and Lycians.
Oh, Rhodians are... That's a good ally. That's a good ally.
With strong navies that could effectively pin Cassius and Brutus in Greece if they were not careful. Cassius thus suggested that their focus should be to eliminate these allies. In doing so, they could flip the tables, forcing the Triumvirs to land a large force in Greece without an adequate naval supply line to support them. Cassius was the more experienced and talented general. He had fought in Crassus's Parthian campaign and had distinguished himself in the aftermath. As such, the two men decided to follow Cassius's strategy. Brutus would handle the Lycians and Cassius the Rhodians.
You gotta sail to Rhodes though, so good luck.
Cassius made for Myndus and began amassing a fleet of 80 ships to sail for Rhodes. He had been partly raised and educated on the island and was well known in the city.
Oh.
Upon hearing of his approach, the Rhodians sent peace delegations. Rhodes was technically an ally of the Roman Republic. The Rhodians had a peace treaty with Rome and had promised to assist the Senate in times of war. With the Senate now effectively controlled by the Triumvirate, the Rhodians could not side against them. Cassius rejected these arguments. He claimed the Senate was run by dictators, that he and Brutus were now the true embodiment of the Republic.
Jeez, it's just so crazy because you don't know, do we believe this?
And that the Rhodians thus owed their allegiance to them. Still, the Rhodians refused Cassius and began preparing their fleet for war. In a last-ditch effort to make peace, they sent Archelaus, Cassius's old teacher, to negotiate. Tearfully, Archelaus begged Cassius to spare the city. Cassius again refused.
Jeez.
He pointed out that the Senate had previously ordered all people east of the Adriatic should assist himself and Brutus. This was true. However, if the Rhodians abided by that decree and assisted Cassius and Brutus, they would simultaneously be breaking their peace treaty by going to war with the Roman Senate.
That's true.
After many days of...
You're just not in a good spot. Like, you're so far away from home that you could fight bravely, maybe win, and then get the support of this triumvirate. But if you go against the triumvirate, you're screwed.
Debating, they finally came to a conclusion. Sailing with 33 of their best ships, they sailed to Myndus to fight Cassius's navy.
Best choice. Unfortunately, that's the best choice.
Cassius reluctantly sailed out of port to meet them. The Rhodians were renowned as some of the best sailors of the ancient world, and their ships were light and quick. The fighting was hard, but Cassius's larger navy was eventually able to surround the Rhodian fleet.
And that's GG's just like that.
Without room to maneuver, the lighter Rhodian ships lost their advantage, and the heavy Roman ships were able to close in. 3 Rhodian ships were captured, 2 sunk, and many badly damaged before the Rhodians withdrew from the battle. Cassius quickly made any necessary repairs to his fleet before pushing his advantage and landing a force on the island. The Rhodian navy attempted to sally out of its port, but was again quickly crushed. Cassius now had Rhodes besieged from both land and sea. Rather than suffer the horrors of a prolonged siege, a faction within the city opened the gates to Cassius. 50 leading Rhodians were executed, and their vast treasury was seized, but the city was spared, Cassius forbidding his men from violence or looting.
Wow. Just like that.
Brutus, meanwhile, led his 8 legions against the important city of Xanthus in Lycia.
I don't really know much about Xanthus, guys, so that's kind of interesting.
The Xanthians had prepared themselves well, creating a trench and embankment around the city. However, many of the men under Brutus's command had served under Caesar and had experience of siegecraft. Working day and night under the protection of movable defenses, the legions were able to completely besiege the city in a matter of days. Battering rams were swiftly brought up to attack the walls and gates. The defenses were strong though, and Brutus's men, having only managed to inflict minor damage on the defenses, abandoned their siege engines. That night,
They're gonna get burned.
the Xanthians sallied out to burn the rams.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Brutus's men fell upon them in the darkness.
Ooh.
The Xanthians had been lured into a trap.
Oh.
Desperately, they tried to retreat into the city,
And that's GG's. They're gonna just overwhelm you now.
but finding the gate had been closed, they were trapped outside, and many were killed in front of the gates. The next day, the Xanthians again sallied out to burn the rams, and the Romans again attacked. This time, the Xanthians kept their gate open, allowing their men to retreat back into the city, but this also resulted in about 2,000 Romans
Y'all are so smart.
also getting through.
Y'all are so smart.
The Xanthians suddenly dropped their portcullis, trapping the Romans inside.
Oh.
They, too,
Y'all are
lured
smart.
the Romans into a trap. Desperately, the 2,000 legionaries trapped inside fought their way to the Forum under constant missile fire, taking refuge in the Temple of Sarpedon. At the same time, their colleagues on the outside were determined to break in and rescue them, attempting to use grappling hooks to scale the walls. Some
Yeah, don't make your desperate force more desperate.
using crags in the wall to climb their way up. A small group was able to scale the walls and opened a small side gate, allowing more legionaries inside. They fought their way to the portcullis, and with men hacking at it from the inside and outside, were finally able to break it down, allowing Brutus's force to pour into the city.
That's it.
The city was lost, and according to Appian, many of the citizens killed themselves, with Brutus only taking 150 men captive.
Wow. Probably didn't kill themselves as much as he killed them.
Following this siege, other cities in Lycia, such as Patara and Myra, quickly surrendered to Brutus. Soon, all of Lycia was pledged to him militarily and paid heavy tribute to him. In a few months, Brutus and Cassius between them had thus neutered two powerful naval allies of the Triumvirs, as well as massively increasing their finances, ensuring that they would be able to keep their legions loyal when the time came to confront the Triumvirs in Greece.
Very interesting stuff here. And that's where we'll stop today. That is, so Rhodes is gone, Xanthus is gone. They have Asia Minor kind of in their pocket. Cleopatra in Egypt still down there. It's kind of a thorn, but not something that we really got to worry about if they're your Cassius or Brutus. Second Triumvirate is beginning to enter Greece on the western side. Rome's under control. There's no really threat on the western side. I guess you can call Sicily a threat right now, but I don't know what's going on in Africa. I don't think anything's going on in Hispania. So yeah, it's kind of like three isolated pockets of action. You got Rome, you got Sicily, which we haven't seen too much action there, and obviously we have now like the Eastern theater as what we see here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave me some video suggestions down below intermittently. We are continuing the series, and this was just part 3. Peace out, and bye-bye.